All right, all right, all right. Beautiful day in the neighborhood. First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. We're in it to win it for the long haul, baby. Want to remind you that on Thursday, June the 6th, as listed here below, we will be having the New Life Recovery Summit. And we want you here, newlifesummit.eventbrite.com. It's all about thinking better. If I think better, I do better. Today's guest, all the way from Morgan State University, Dandre Poole. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself? Thank you for having me. How
Is
are
it
you
hot
doing?
enough for you?
Yeah, just a little bit, just a little bit. I
Where are you from,
think I'll
Dandre?
cool down eventually. I am originally from Greensboro, North Carolina.
Well, this
Um,
ain't hot for you. You used to real heat.
no. I was just going along with what you said. It's fine. Just got a little lotion on, trying to have a right sheen for the camera and a little bit of
DeAndre,
some stuff behind stage. But I'm here. It'll clear up eventually.
DeAndre, let me tell you, I started college down in Atlanta, and nobody told me how hot it was. I was down there in August. I had a
Yeah,
fan. I did not have an air conditioner. I had a little fan.
yeah.
Oh my God. I
Well, the
never
thing about
changed
it.
clothes 3 times in one day in my life.
You had to do that to you because if you somewhere like here, you had it in the harbor, you had a breeze, and if you were out in southern Florida, you had a breeze from the ocean. But somewhere like Atlanta or Greensboro on that 85 highway, there is no breeze. So if it's hot, it's just hot. It's a different type. Yeah, definitely. So I can see how you had trouble adjusting in that for sure.
The only other place hotter than that I went was Africa.
Okay. I'm sure they can compete for
The
sure.
first 4 days we were in Ethiopia, it was cool. As a matter of fact, the people have what we would call a blanket.
Uh-huh.
That's part of their attire, like a blanket.
Uh-huh.
But we then went to Tanzania. As soon as I got off the plane, it's like the sun punched me in the face.
Wow. When was
Yeah,
that?
it
When did
was
you go
hot.
there?
2006, it was hotter than hot,
Got you.
hotter
I
than
bet.
July.
I bet. I bet. Well, hot weather is good.
It
Keep you
is.
some water, you'll be okay.
Well, I've learned, I am learning. At 58 years old, I'm still learning. I
Yes,
tell you
every
something
day.
else I'm learning. That's the topic du jour about mental health. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I want to thank you and Morgan State University for making it a priority.
Thank you very much. It's
Why is
really
it important, in your words?
it's important just because health overall is important. You know what I mean? So just if you, as health, just as you would, take into account any type of physical health, mental health is the same way to have a good, daily functioning every day, be able to take care of your activities of daily living, socialize appropriately, and basically just live a healthy lifestyle. That's really the whole purpose.
So, when I was in high school at
Mm-hmm.
Poly here in Baltimore, 2 years at Poly,
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. And Poly had this A course. You were either in the A course, the B course, or the T course. And those of us in the A course, to drop down on the B to the B course was like betrayal. It's like you just don't do that because you up here,
Yes,
at least
sir.
in our minds. But I remember this white kid committed suicide. And I remember saying to myself, I don't care how hard Poly gets, I'm not going out like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How, what do students go through that makes suicide an option? Do you think?
Well, I mean, well, you just mentioned, the great Poly High School, so that's a high school student, and we work at Morgan in the council. I work at Morgan, in the counseling center. So, you know, students can go through things in the general sense, but it can also differ depending on, what grade they're in or what level of education that they're in. Sometimes when you're in high school, going towards college and whatnot, what you're approaching is what we call in psychology a life change, a change of life, very similar to puberty, marriage, divorce, moving, things like that, but when you're at that high school, college age, you don't recognize that you're going through that at the time. You don't understand where all the stress is coming from, where the anxiety and stuff is coming from, and if you don't have a strong support system, you know that can be a risk factor. Absolutely. We all know that school coming definitely brings a lot of stressors in itself, because school can be challenging, especially the higher up you move in education. But to get back to your question, yeah, so there are definitely some challenges that school brings about. But from what I see with what our students, they go through the same thing we all go through. You know what I mean? They're just a different population. So a lot of times, if a student is going through something, maybe something dealing with depression or one of these other risk factors for suicide, it's normally something that they came into the school with. You know what I mean? Most likely some type of a cyclic factor, meaning that it's something that's happened over and over, something that's been reoccurring with them and probably within their family as well. So a lot of that, you have to consider as well. The students are really no different than everybody else. More risk, more stressors, but they deal with the same thing we all deal with. Yeah.
When you first got into counseling, I would imagine that the concept of mental health stigmas came up.
Hmm.
Now, me, I'm an advocate for therapy. I say all the time, I have several therapists. And I also say if my therapist don't have a therapist, I'm getting rid of that therapist.
Yeah, right. It's
Because
good.
therapy works. It's dumping.
Absolutely.
Is that stigma changing?
You know, stigmas, these old deep-seated beliefs, you know what I mean? Internal beliefs or communal beliefs, those things can take a long time to unwind, So to ask that question, sure, we all want to see things move quicker, but it's moving slowly. But I think one of the main changes that I'm seeing is that mental health is starting to, and I'm trying to push, as well as the counseling center, is mental health challenges or illness or health overall is no different than medical, physical health. It's all on the same continuum. When we're treating individuals, we all work in an interdisciplinary team, meaning the doctors, the psychiatrists, team members, and people try to make it, again, that word communal um, effort overall. So I hope that's the main change that I want to emphasize now, that I think will push us forward. Started with the Obama administration, is that, I want to look at medical health and mental health on the same level. So, for example, if somebody's dealing with something like a heart problem, and we show compassion to them. If somebody's dealing with psychosis, I want to see the community show that same compassion to them as well. You know.
Have you ever seen somebody fall apart because of mental health?
Well, I've worked in a lot of different settings. I've done a lot of, and you're a psychologist, sometimes it might not just be therapy, it might be some assessment that you do as well. That's another option to us as career. So working at Morgan, yes, that's therapy based, but I've also worked doing assessment for Social Security and another, mental health agencies and whatnot, communal mental health agencies. So I've definitely seen a lot of people with a lot of severe mental illness.
So,
Definitely.
so I'm going to put it to you.
Hmm.
What can we do if someone we love is going through something? And we know, because, and I got to say, and I'm so grateful for this show. Thank you to the guy who sponsors this, Ben McCormick. But suppose we have a loved one or friend, and they're going to school, but we know that they are falling apart inside. What are signs we should look out for? And what can we do? How do we proceed? How do I help my friend? Because
Support
I
them
know there's
as
denial among other things.
yeah. Support them as much as you possibly can. Sometimes to the untrained eye, support may look like, giving them advice or going in there too quick to solve the problem when really, a lot of times people just need people to listen to them, empathetically, non-judgmentally, so support them by listening, but not by badgering them too much or giving too much advice. That could be tough though. It really can, because when somebody's sharing something with us, especially when it's a loved one, you start to feel bad. You feel anxiety. They start to place kind of what they're feeling onto you. So the natural sense as a human is to try to get out of that, and then that might make you want to, well, you do this, do that. Why don't you do this? Blah, things like that instead of listening more. So just being conscious of that dynamic may be taking place may help you to listen more. And then if it's to a point where you need more than that, you have to recognize when you've done as much as you can, right? Not stigmatize mental health treatment, and try to make some type of necessary referral. You know what I mean? Anybody in the community can be a referral source. We can be a referral source to our immediate family members. You know what I mean? So that's how I would support them. That's what I would do to help them. Support them by listening non-judgmentally and making the necessary referrals, definitely. And also, one more thing: if we do a lot of diagnosing amongst people who aren't qualified to diagnose, but at the same time, there are certain things that we can get a smell for. Like, for example, any adult human can see if somebody's dealing with some kind of depression or something. So it doesn't hurt to kind of maybe Google a little bit. You have your cell phones, educate yourself a little bit to see exactly what it is that you're supporting, but not too, don't try to be an expert with it. Just try to familiarize yourself a little bit if you don't, if you
You
don't
need
know.
your own show. I think you need a show on our network, DeAndre. You already don't you already do a show?
I don't. I
I
don't do
saw
any
you on a
type of show.
podcast.
Huh?
You were on
Oh,
a
well, been trying making my rounds a little bit, trying to get used to this a little bit. It
we
could be
want
nerve
you
wracking.
to come back on this show on a regular basis. We need to hear this. This show is all about mental health. We do it 3 times a week,
Hmm.
but people need to hear this. I gotta tell you, man. I mean, as you were talking, it took me back. I'm 58. It took me back 40 years when my mom got sick with cancer. I was at Morehouse, 18 years old, and then by the time I was 20, she had died. My
Sorry
bestie,
to hear that.
and I just remember trying to grapple with one, you ain't going to Morehouse no more because that thing was expensive and she was helping me foot that bill.
Hmm. It's a
But two, the
private
whole
school.
home life had changed. Mommy gone. So Pops went his way, I went my way. And I just remember trying to wrestle with all of that stuff by myself at 18 years old. It can be tough. And I'm sure you deal with students all of the time who may be dealing with death.
Yes, absolutely. Grief and loss is very tough. It's something that we're all gonna deal with sometimes. When we look at it chronologically, uh, especially when we're talking about losing a parent, like what you just um, disclosed us. I'm sorry to hear about that. I'm sure it's still tough today.
Well,
But
I have a comeback for you, and I'll tell you after you finish.
okay, okay. When you're dealing with something like that, we all wish and hope that that is something that happens later in life. You know what I mean? But unfortunate, because we all going to have to deal with it. But unfortunately, sometimes that happens for us um, at a younger age in college, like what you just explained. And when that happens, that can be really, really tough at that age because you're just not finished developing, cognitively. Then you have to deal with that trauma. But grief and loss is tough. I heard something this morning though. It's funny that you mentioned that. Is that a lot of times uh, when we're dealing with grief and stuff, we try to run away from it. Especially if we have to continue our everyday lives. Because one thing about grief and loss is that we live in a very individualistic Western culture. So when somebody passes away, transitions, the rest of the world doesn't care as much. I mean, even our workers, our friends and stuff, they'll support us, but that third, fourth week, the world is still going. You know what I mean? You still have to deal with that. So when you have to, the bills still have to get paid, I guess is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So when you have to deal with that, it's very easy to get into this spot where you are just trying to get away from dealing with that pain. You know what I mean? But I heard something earlier that a good technique to that is to schedule times for you to deal with that pain. Just like you schedule everything else, a lot of time when you're going through that, how much every time you can spare, hopefully at least an hour or two, where you can just sit somewhere in a quiet place and just deal with that and go through it. So that way it's more something that's expected, you know what I mean? Controlled. It's not just coming from anywhere, and it's giving yourself grace and permission, to deal with that. You know what I mean? Because the quicker that we start to deal with that, the more we can start to transition. We'll never be the same after dealing with a loss with that, but transition and continuing, healthy life. Definitely, death is a part of life.
So there's two pieces I want to give you. One is that when mommy got sick, I should tell you that my father was a funeral director and mortician. So I grew up in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to say that doesn't make it any easier.
No.
Having even though I grew up in the family business, serving other families, when the shoe is on the other foot, none of that crap even matters. None of it matters.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in the big scheme of things that as we learn to show compassion to others in the big universe, that compassion does come back around. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
My daddy was a funeral director. I saw more dead bodies by the age of 5 than most people see in a lifetime. But when the shoe's on the other foot, totally different story. But secondly, I wanted to share this with you. So she's been gone 39 years. I think of her all the time, and I've come a long way. I've learned to channel that energy. The day she got her wings was March 16th. And for years, I run a business, been running one for 22 years. For years now, I find something to do on that day that channels my energy. One year, we did a Black Wall Street. I do these Black Wall Street awards up and down the East Coast. So this one particular March 16th, we were in Brooklyn, New York, and we did a Black Wall Street at Brooklyn Borough Hall, and we had the Cancer Foundation as a sponsor. So I'm learning to channel this energy, and one of our co-hosts, was suffering from cancer at the time herself. So one, I've learned to channel that energy, but I gotta share this hit with you. Now I'm a journalist. I'm at Morgan. That's how I came across you. I'm in finishing up my master's in journalism. The
nice.
Black newspaper.
Congratulations.
Praise God. Thank you. The Black newspaper, the Black press, that's my bailiwick. That's my whole world, the Black press. I find out last year, her 38th year with her wings, that March 16th, the day she got her wings, is also the birthday of the Black press.
Nice.
I wouldn't have found out if I didn't stick around, because there were some dark times. But I've also learned this third lesson, that when our loved ones go on, they want us to be happy. They do not want us to be sad. They want us to be happy as all outdoors every single day. And we shouldn't worry them from here. Worry them by not living our best life. What they say, I'm living my life like I'm golden. We really should be living our lives like it's like our lives are golden every single day, whether it means dressing up, putting your clothes on. Fight that depression by any and every means necessary, because it's real. Depression is real. That's what I wanted to share with you.
Yeah. Definitely. Continuing to move forward, and by doing that, they're a representation of you. They're a family member, like all of your ancestors. You know what I mean? So by living that, they're still living through you, and you're representing them well. Yep.
How did how did you guys come up with Suicide Prevention Day at Morgan State University?
That's a loaded question, but before we get to that, can I reference, because you brought up an event of what happened with your classmate back in high school. That was a that was obviously somewhat of a traumatic event. Did that shape your thoughts about suicide or mental health overall? Because suicide is a very
It wasn't talked about. I only heard about it sparingly. It wasn't like it was all over the school. You just heard about somebody in the A course committed suicide. Who was it? It was a white boy over here, blah, blah, blah. But still, the human in me put it in perspective like, I love this A course and I don't want to drive to the B course. But in my little mind, I said, but I ain't doing that. They could have this A course and all of that. I'm not going out like that. That's what I remember saying to myself. I'll never forget it. Maybe it did. But then I will tell you this. I did have a younger cousin who committed suicide. And I'll say this, and I pray that none of those people are listening, but if they are, it is. He was Muslim. And I'll never forget the Imam. The Imam is the Muslim pastor. The Imam said that Allah, God, will not forgive him. And I remember saying to myself, how the hell you know? Now, I love this Imam. I looked at him as my own preacher. But on that note, how you know where God going to decide for my baby cousin? You don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I told myself.
Oh, okay, that's unfortunate that would happen,
Yeah.
but it's interesting that happened in a in a Muslim environment, because those same teachings are also taught in other religions, including Christianity. But that goes back to destigmatizing mental health again, because most of the time suicide is attached to some type of mental health challenge or diagnosis. It's clinical,
Well,
like
in
depression or
Japan,
bipolar or something.
in
So,
Japan, Japan, they do the sword thing out of honor.
yes, they do. That's a little different. I know that's why that's why I said some suicide, because I know I was leaving a spot for that. I wasn't really gonna go there, but if
But
it's
suppose
dealing
you
with
grow up and you say that ain't honorable. I might be that one. Time out. Let's talk about this.
there's a level of coercion that goes with that, and especially when you have such strong beliefs on that type of
I might need a
thing, and
plane
somebody
ticket. See you
says
later,
this is
Japan. Sayonara.
yeah. So, but hopefully, my point was, I hope if you look at somebody, okay, couple things. If you look at somebody who dies by suicide, who completes suicide as a mental health challenge, as them succumbing to an illness, it's no different than somebody that succumbs to a medical illness, like a heart attack, for example, because the person is sick, they need help. When somebody is severely suicidal, the treatment for them is hospitalization, just like when somebody's heart is severely not working properly. You understand what I'm saying? They have to be safe from themselves until they can get better, until they can heal. So when you look at it from more of a medical aspect, then it kind of gives better definition to some of the religious aspects. But I'm gonna go on what you asked me. Why we started it at Morgan State? I'm still there, but let me say something because I was gonna say it earlier. Um, American Foundation of Suicide Prevention is who Morgan State, AFSP, right? .org is who Morgan State has partnered with for the last 2 years to do the campus walk. And one of the initiatives that they have is to kind of give the right language to suicide, because if you haven't been educated on it, or if you have been fortunate enough to not have a loved one who has experienced suicidal behavior, then you may refer to it in ways like killed themselves or committed suicide. And the
Language.
AFSP suggests that we use the completed suicide or died by suicide, because the idea is that the word committed gives a criminal aspect to it, and suicide is a mental health challenge. It's not a crime. It's not like, in this regard, it's not the opposite of homicide, where if you try to kill somebody and you don't complete it, then you go to jail. If you try to complete suicide and it doesn't work, you don't get arrested for that. It's not a crime. It's a mental health illness. You know what I mean? Challenge. So that part. But so there we go. Now, how did
The
it come to
language.
Morgan? It
You've
came
made
to
it. You
Morgan
made
because of me,
the
right?
language is
Because one of
important.
the jobs at Morgan as a counselor outside of therapy is also to do outreach programs. Outreach to who? Outreach to the campus, to the students, right? And sometimes with the community joins us as well. So I started the suicide initiative because I had a personal experience with suicide, not me. Back in 2014, my youngest uncle was 10 years older than me. What I say? See, because I can mess up and say that other word too. We've been saying that for so long. You know what I mean? It's going to take a while to get out of our vocabulary. That goes back to destigmatization and that slow change overall. You know what I mean?
I do.
He died by suicide, right? And the method was asphyxiation, carbon monoxide poisoning on purpose. Very, very well thought out. By the way, when men complete suicide, they're more likely, when men attempt suicide, when they have active suicidal behavior, they're more likely to complete it, to do it, because they use more violent forms, or more forms that's more likely to get the job done, like shooting, for example, or something that they know is going to work. You know what I mean? They don't do the pills and the things like that could not work. If they go to do it, a lot of times they complete it. So this was really, really well thought out and studied. After when somebody in your family dies by suicide, you become a member of this community of survivors or family members. And so we start to compare notes and things like that. And one thing we do when a family member dies is to try to figure out why. So you start going through your stuff, their things and stuff like that, because it's not like on TV. Everybody doesn't leave a suicide note. You know what I mean? It doesn't quite work like that. So we started going through his things and started to see the Google searches and how thought out this had been. Never told anybody about it. We never had any idea that my uncle was suicidal.
That we
Yeah,
suffer.
we always said that he was very quiet and reserved because he had been like that his whole life. But because of what trauma that he had dealt with when he was earlier, that's when that behavior started. And when you do something enough, it becomes part of your personality. So even us as family members, we kind of missed it, totally missed it with this person that we grew up with our whole life. I think that happens a lot in families, especially in Black families. So when you see that person that's too quiet, they're too reserved, especially when that's a characteristic that's uncharacteristic for the family, that's something you may, want to keep an eye on. But we never had it. So keep that in mind. Never had any idea that he was going to do this. So never had a chance to help, right? That's number one. That's a hard pill to swallow. Number two, when I found out that this happened down in Greensboro, I was here in Baltimore because this is where I live. So when this happened and I got the call that it happened, I was with a group of Masonic brothers at the time. And one of the first things that I said was that this doesn't happen to Black people. You know what I mean? That's why I went back when you said that white boy from your school earlier. That's how our community thinks of it. This doesn't happen to Black people. So that was back in 2014. So when I come and start working at Morgan, and now one of my jobs is to do outreach to the community, then boom, of course, this, because it's something I've always wanted to do. Now let's back up. So maybe like 2 months after my uncle passed away, the AFSP, again, American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, afsp.org, had a walk. They do walks. They do city walks. They had one out in Washington D.C. Right. My mother came up from Greensboro. We went to D.C. We did the walk. So when I remembered them from that, and then there it is, right up there on the site. They're definitely a good organization to look into. Some other ones that I'll share with you. You can post it as well. Once I connected with them, they started to talk to me about doing a campus walk because they have campus walks from different colleges all throughout the United States. So now each AFSP has their own chapter. Obviously, we're in the Maryland chapter, right? So I said, okay, good idea, a campus walk. Talk to my supervisor. We've never had one of those at Morgan State University. So of course, I start to look around. Now, this is where it gets interesting, though. I start to look around at different colleges, and I noticed that every college in Maryland does this campus walk, but none of them are HBCUs. You
Somebody
understand
didn't
what I'm
send us
saying?
the memo.
Not one HBCU. So anyway, that was a problem because between the ages of 18 and 24, somewhere around there, suicide is the second leading cause of death.
In the
You
black
understand what I'm
community?
saying? That's
Or
the exact population that's in college. Yeah.
black and white?
Black. This black
Black.
statistic.
Black.
Yes. Second leading cause of death. So we started to do the suicide walk like that. We did it the first year. It was a success. We raised a lot of money. This year, we didn't raise as much money. We had more participation. We had the band to come out. We had Phi Beta Sigma Gamma chapter to come out. We
I
had the Morgan
want you
State.
to never let me miss another one of these events or anything else related. You can count on our entire network to help you promote this long after I leave Morgan State. I've been on Morgan's radio station since I was 15 years old. I promise to help you get this word out.
Thank you, thank you. So with those 2 points, right? So that's my initiative, Dr. Poole, and the Counseling Center's initiative as well. Is number one, um, if first of all, never have another person of anybody really, black, white, Jewish, Gentile, whatever, but definitely within the black community, I don't want people to not hear about it or not have any knowledge about it, right? That's one of my main goals. I want everybody to be educated, whether they're dealing with it or not. Again, we're all going to be referral sources, right?
Yeah.
And number two, if somebody destigmatizing, if somebody out there, like my uncle was, is thinking about completing suicide, right? And taking themselves off of this earth, away from their loved ones and away from everything they could have been, I want them to feel like they can tell somebody,
Yes,
whether
sir.
it be me or you or
Yes, sir.
whoever, so we can get them help. You understand? So that is the main focus of that walk and of the initiative overall. Yep.
Listen. This is so real. Within the past month, a friend of mine came up to me and said, I tried to kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did the best I knew at the time and since then. For me, a part of this show is asking you, Dr. Poole, if that situation happened again, what should we say to the person who comes up to us and says that I tried to kill myself? What do we do?
First of all, pay attention to your own emotions. That goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know what I mean about supporting somebody and listening, because when somebody comes to you and tells you that, and you can look at them, you know them, and you can tell they're serious, that's very heavy on yourself. You know what I mean? So pay attention to your own emotions. Don't personalize it. Stay calm with your deep breathing and recognize, wow, they just told me a lot. Let me stay calm, you know, hopefully let me stay calm in this situation, you know what I mean, and let me respond appropriately. That goes back to listening to them, and also making a referral, trying to get them help somewhere. 988 right, is a mental health 911. You can dial that number as well. Now,
It's
continuing with that answer.
988.
Yes, having any type of crisis, dial that number, and you could definitely get some emergency help. Now, I go a little bit further with that answer without taking too much time. You want to figure out if that person is actively suicidal or if they're passively suicidal, because, like you said earlier, and you were saying, I forget that little saying you were saying, but what the young kids say is life is life, and you know what I mean. Life can be really tough. So the first thing that you want to do is to. So we've all had thoughts of, wow, I wish I wasn't here. What would it be like if I was here? This is too much, overwhelming feelings. Those are called suicidal ideations. You understand what I'm saying? And they're not great at all. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of us have had those, way more that we'll admit. They're more common, not just in the Black community, but overall. But we're not, we're not different in that regard. You understand what I'm saying? So you want to determine, is this person having an ideation? Don't try to be a mental health professional. Or are they saying, I'm going to do this? I'm going to shoot myself. And I have a gun in the cabinet at home. Or my son has been talking about, I had a friend, that had a son, a young elementary school son, whose father passed away. And he had been talking about wanting to kill himself, and he's shooting and wants to shoot himself. In that regard, obviously, you'd want to get all the guns away or whatnot. Does this person have a plan? And if they do have a plan, do they have means to carry out that plan? I want to take pills. Well, they have a prescription for this type of pill because they just had surgery last week. That type of thing. So just to talk, is this something that you need to act on right now by dialing that 988 or 911 or whatever the case is? Or is this more of an ideation where you can listen to them empathetically, non-judgmentally, and then convince them to go get help as soon as possible? Yeah.
In your journey as a mental health professional, has the good Lord spoke to you and encouraged you to keep it up?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that. I was thinking about that before the call as well, because especially in the Black community, one of the main ways to provide treatment, regardless of what it is, whether it's independent or outreach or group or whatever, is to add our people from the community as well. So that means family members. As Black people, a lot of times we have people that are really close to us, like family, but that are like non-family members. Add them in if that's possible. Communal leaders in our community. Obviously, it's the church. Add them in as well. So absolutely, yes, the Lord always speaks to me, and the Lord tells me to add in the church as well, if need be, and really any religious base that anybody serves. A lot of times, some of those religious beliefs about suicide, right? Even though they can be insensitive, sometimes they actually serve as a way to keep the person away from doing it. Because they say, I can't do that because my religion tells me that's horrible. So sometimes it can actually work in a positive way. So, examples like that, definitely. The Lord speaks to me all the time, and I want to add in the church and all religious aspects into therapy as much as possible. Yeah.
How did the students respond, react to the walk? What were their thoughts?
Mm, the walk has a component to it that's like a presentation component as well. So we have a lot of speakers as well, and have a lot of performances and stuff. So while there is that remembrance quality, there's also it's just about awareness overall. And so even though anytime you have an event about suicide, there's obviously going to be a very a sad component to it as well. But it wasn't just about the remembrance. It was about honoring those lives, just like some of these stories that we're sharing, honoring these lives and using those stories to spread awareness so that, others don't have the same, you know, don't have the same situation happened with them. Yeah.
So
So the students responded well because we had a lot of good performances and stuff like that. They like upbeat things and like that. So it's good. So give them a lot of different information. We had different tables where they can take information about suicide, definitely about other mental health uh, options, for them and other coping skills and things like that. We had a coping skills table, other organizations on campus. So it's very interactive and very fun. So the students like it. Yeah.
so it was dawning on me that as we're making people more aware of the stigma, the language to use, of those around us, of how to identify it. Where do we go from here as a
Um,
community? What can we do to further educate? Because you have broken down some stigmas that I had, and you said it's rather normal. We in the black community, we think, oh, we don't do this. And you're like, hold up, pump your brakes. Because if you see somebody drinking all day, every day, isn't that a form of suicide? You see people, I live in Sandtown. Since Freddie Gray, we got addicts that come to Sandtown from all over the state, including white addicts. And they don't have a lot of times the same kind of respect for the community. So you see people shooting dope in public. I mean, it's like nowadays, there's just no filter. I mean, even women, I mean, and this is not about suicide. It's just that nowadays it's nothing to see a half naked woman walking down the street. I mean, it's there. And then how do the young people, how do they process almost like there are no rules anymore?
hmm Yeah, those
I know that's
products.
a lot.
I don't know if those people are trying to commit suicide. They're self-medicating is what they're doing. They're trying to live. You know what I mean? They need help, but they're getting it from the wrong source, from the streets instead of from, a professional. The young kids are,
And they popping perks. The kids, because they sell dope, they sell heroin, but they pop perks. And then with the perks, it's like, oh no, I'm not a dope fiend. Yes, you are.
man, prayer. That's when you come out of the mental health realm, you know what I mean, and pray for them, pray for the community, and hopefully some of that prayer will entail them reaching out to some support systems. We have a lot of good agencies, and we get calls at Morgan State all the time from different agencies that want to collaborate with us, that want to, promote their businesses and stuff. So, the resources are out there, definitely.
I got another stigma for you, Doc. We think people with money don't have problems. Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire, and they found him in a jail cell with a necktie.
Mm-hmm.
They said that he hung himself. But what I'm really looking at is how mental illness has no respect of persons. Mental illness don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Jew, a Gentile, you rich, you poor. It don't care.
You're right. It really doesn't. Neither does suicide. You know what I mean? It attacks everybody, and when it happens, it doesn't care that you black and your family don't believe in it, or that the church said that you're going to go to hell because of it. Excuse me. It doesn't. It doesn't. It really doesn't. So yeah, you definitely. I agree with that. You asked me earlier where we go from here, in our community, in regards to suicide. I'm hoping that we can get um, more suicide agencies that have an initiative specifically to the Black community. And I just say that a little bit hesitantly because as a Black community, our businesses have the ability to make impact all throughout, everywhere. We don't, as a people, we don't just empower each other, we empower everybody. So I don't want to limit, us to that, what we can spread in a spiritual way, in a mental health way, or that we can use as our business. You know what I mean, as well. But I'm hoping that specifically that we have some agencies, you know what I mean, that cater more to, that have the initiative more towards the African American community. There's a lot of hotlines, or the hotline that we can call, and we know, well, this agency is the Black agency. That's all. That's just my own personal thing. I think that with AFSP, one of the things that kept us going is that they were doing a lot of research. But then we noticed that there wasn't a lot of research in the African American community. And in the African American community, just like everything, the rates of suicide are disproportionate in numbers. So therefore, we felt like there should be some research. So the AFSP has done a lot of research in that area, and they want to continue to do that as well. More research and more agencies specifically for us. Yeah.
Something else that
Couldn't
we
get away with saying it. I couldn't get away with saying specifically for us, but there I said it. Whatever.
Well, here's something specific to us. America represents 5% of the world's population. Yet America has 25% of the incarcerated persons. 35% of those incarcerated persons are Black men. Although we as a people make up 15% of this country, people that look like me and you, Black men, make up over 1/3 of the people incarcerated. Can you speak to, and is no secret, the how many that people complete suicide inside a jail cell? Any thoughts on the interrelationship or the intersection, the nexus between Black people, prison, and completing suicide?
Let's see if I can keep those in order. Okay.
I mean, just the fact that we face the criminal justice system more than anyone in America, shouldn't we be getting a lot more therapy? And I mean, when people
we should have been getting the therapy before we got to the criminal justice system. That's the problem. You understand what I'm saying? And that goes back to stigmatizing mental illness within our community, but also stigmatizing us outside of the community, and not adding those potential risk factors like mental health into some of the presentation. You know, as Black people, I keep wanting to say this as you were talking, is that we're not expected to have mental health challenges because we're always expected to be strong. You know what I mean? Especially as African Americans. I know you referenced, but it's the whole African diaspora. Yeah, with slaves all over, definitely North America. And we are the descendants of those strong people. So we've been through that. We can go through anything. It doesn't mean that that's not true. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean that we don't deal
we're human beings
with mental health challenges. When somebody's going to prison and dealing with risk factors that cause, you know, us people to have to commit crimes and things of that nature, a lot of it has to do with environment. A lot of it has to do with genetics. Keep in mind biological factors, evolution. Keep in mind, I just told you that we are descendants of slaves. There are a lot of cyclic things that are going on with that are passed on through that. And then we have to deal with biases and racism towards us. So what gets me is that research has shown that when we're charged with crimes, we're normally charged with crimes that are more severe than our white brothers and sisters, and the sentences that we get tend to be more severe than our white brothers and sisters. And I think a lot of it is that because the justice system doesn't take account the mental health aspect earlier, you know what I mean, or as much as they should. Like, for example, when one of our white brothers or sisters goes and does some type of a spree shooting, if you notice, the media, even in that heinous crime, you know what I mean, in that traumatic event that they visited on a bunch of people, can still find a way to find compassion for that person and talk about their mental health.
Took them to McDonald's. Man, killed all the people in the black church. They
Yeah.
took up the Burger King.
And there will always be a conversation about mental health in that somewhere if you look close enough. But when it comes to us, we don't, the conversation is more about our, our personality, our characteristics. We're predestined for that. They don't take into account that we're dealing with the mental health challenges as well.
So if we call that 988, is that better than calling 911? Because we call that number, we get shot. They call it death by cop.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know about that. I just have to pray about that one. Hopefully not. Hopefully explain it to them that
Here's another one. I gotta put this last one. And you fielded some great questions. You've given us some a lot of positive responses. You got to come back on the show. But gambling. I see Kevin Hart and this whole network. I led a campaign to get Kevin Hart to stop promoting gambling in my state, in our state of Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
You Mr. Funny Man, you worth $450 million. We don't need you over here. I'm serious. Little funny man, Kevin Hart, little man on the big bed, look like a trampoline. Listen, we don't need Mr. Funny Man.
Well, he's got the money to gamble with.
Yeah, but don't be pushing gambling over here on us. Have you ever walked through a casino?
Listen,
them people look depressed as hell.
Yeah. Listen, man, that's another addiction. That's another coping mechanism is gambling. And I'm going to tell you, gambling is a very, very, very bad addiction. You understand what I'm saying? Can rival drugs at any day. They have so many centers. Well, they have centers that are specific to gambling addiction. And
he spent the rent money. He spent the mortgage money. The
that's the problem.
Money, the car note money.
Yeah.
Or she spent it. Grandma going up to Atlantic City every weekend.
Right. And still feeling empty inside, still not finding that void or whatever they're looking for.
You ever get the phone call? Listen, lend me $200 till tomorrow morning.
Yeah, all the time. All the time. And tomorrow morning turn into 3 weeks, 3 months. Never.
Don't play with black people money. You have a problem. I don't know no black people.
Hey, listen, let me tell you this. Let me say something to you. You asked me about suicides in jail. And I don't have specific numbers on that. That's a horrible thing. There are several mental illnesses that that can lead to somebody completing suicide, especially in jail. But I think that one of the main things that has to happen with that is that some of these agencies that we're talking about, some of the human rights campaigns that we're talking about, some of us that we need to talk about, that, need to write some letters, do more podcasting like this, talk to some government officials, write letters to the specific jails and talk to them about mental health treatment, and basically
they took a lot of money, Dr. Poole, from mental health. They closed a lot of mental health facilities over the past 20 years. A lot of them here in Maryland, Greater Baltimore, they closed them. So these people are walking the streets. I saw a lady this morning. She was drenched in feces. She was chasing that dope all night, but she had messed on herself. It was just, ooh.
It's tough, though. It's tough because to finish it's like what I was going to say is it's tough, though, even in jail, because even with her, because it's hard to make somebody receive treatment.
Oh, yeah.
That woman that you're talking about, clearly she's having some type of a psychotic break. She needs some type of medical treatment, some type of psychotropic treatment. But you can't make her. Even in jail, you can't make people take treatment. If they can, remain stable, you know what I mean? There's nothing that they can really do to them in there. So sometimes it's just all about having our hands tied and praying about it, and just hoping that that the mental health professionals that are in the jails are effective enough that they can, cause some cause some change with that suicide in jail. Definitely, it's tough though.
Well, Doc, I want to ask you to consider coming down and speaking to us on June the 6th. We have this mental health summit here at New Life Recovery. We help people with drugs, alcohol, and gambling. But it's not just for people in recovery of substance abuse. As you know, mental health touches everybody. And
yes, sir.
You taught us a new word today, suicide ideation.
Ideation. Yeah, ideation.
The idea. And so more of us have had that thought, and it's okay. It doesn't mean we're suicidal.
Right.
It's almost natural, I would imagine. We wouldn't be the first one to have thought that.
Not at all.
But going steps further and acting on it.
And they start planning, talking about how they're gonna do it, setting dates.
Now we got a problem.
And how to meet. Yes. And that's the person you need to stay on that. Don't think that that's gonna go away or nothing. Stay on that. Call that 988. Call 911. Call your mom, your grandma, whoever can make them go. Do that. Take it seriously. Yeah.
Why'd you come on the show? You had no idea. I know you had to do some Google, some research. Who is this person calling me up, asking me to come on the show? What'd you find, Dr. Poole?
Listen, I didn't really Google too much. Maybe I should have done that more. Anytime anybody allows me to speak out or whatever, it's just an extension of my job. Just trying to spread awareness throughout the community, definitely, about mental health challenges. We have a lot of different.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, because we know, based on these numbers up here, we know somebody is listening, and we have touched somebody.
Yeah, definitely. That is the whole goal. You know what I mean? So maybe somebody that's listening was having those thoughts and going into planning. Now they have more information. Now they can reach out. Or maybe somebody that's listening knows somebody else or something like that. It's a web. It really is. And we got to take care of ours.
Or maybe our child. I mean, none of us want to think, oh, my child. But if it is my child, then I got to get my child some help. And it's okay. It's not, I heard somebody say once, it's never as bad as you think it is. Meaning,
no.
The first thing, like you said, I heard you loud and clear. You said if somebody came up to me and told me something dramatic about them in their life, the first thing I got to do is be cool.
Yes.
Take a deep breath.
Yes.
And not let my emotions overtake me.
Yeah.
It was heavy, man. I wasn't expecting that on that evening. I was not expecting I was looking to catch up on, but that became the 911. I got to go get some coffee now. Let's talk about this. What do I need to do? And something else you said that is so profound, and maybe you can come back and next time we can go into it deeper. But I heard you talking about that isolation. As someone who was years ago chased all of the cocaine in the world, I know how it is being isolated. You isolate yourself. You don't want nobody to bother you. Go outside, kind of like COVID. And the pandemic, you're isolated, and that's dangerous. Any thoughts on isolation?
It's impossible to live on this earth by yourself. At some point, you got to be around other people. So that isolation, it can only get you but so far, definitely. Yep.
Yes, sir. Doc, how can people get in touch with you?
It's interesting. I have an email that you can drop if you want to.
Sure.
My name is Dandre Poole, DeePoole on Facebook. That's good enough.
That'll work.
DeePoole. Yep. You can also follow the Morgan State Counseling Center, Instagram at Morgan Counseling Center. So we always posting all the good things we're doing, posting positive affirmations, weekly and stuff like that. And
do you know Dr. Bradley?
I think so, yeah.
Dr. Bradley, he's always putting stuff in the. He's always he sends out memos. I tell you, I get more memos from Morgan. My God, y'all send out the memos. Lord, I got to hire a secretary just to read the memo.
I was about to say, you have to be a fast, avid reader. Yeah, it could be much, but
it's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. have to
And
take the
that's where I
time.
learned about this, about the work that you're doing. And I want to continue to be here and help do my part to illuminate this. We don't want people living in darkness. We want to give them as much information as possible, because the more information we have, the better I think, the better I live.
Right. That was the whole thing. It was the suicide awareness prevention walk, because awareness, right? Education, awareness, information can lead to prevention. Yep.
Good deal. Well, we thank you very much. We pray that we have touched somebody out there and saved a life. In the name of our Creator, amen. You have a great weekend, Dr. Poole, and come back anytime you like.
And thank you for having me on. It was a nice conversation. I enjoyed it. Be
Yes, sir.
blessed.
Yes, sir. Well, folks, it's been a wonderful day. I want you to have a great weekend. If I think better, I do better. Thank you, Mr. Van McCormick, for this show. We hope that we have touched some lives. If you want to come on the show, you can call me up. I'll put my number right here. Call me up personally. We'd love to have you on the show. We talk about mental health. We talk about substance abuse. We talk about recovery. We talk about common sense. A lot of times we just need someone to tell us some common sense, some basic stuff. So have a great day and have a safe weekend. Good afternoon, world.